So by this point, we've seen how we can create a new project and we can start adding in our design and actually modifying the criteria. So things like the IDF data, the land uses, the catalogs. What I'm going to show you now is how you can actually export that data so that you can reuse it on future projects. And even better than that, I'm going to show you how you can create project templates so that once you've done a project in one municipality, you can save a template. And so next time you start a project in the same municipality, you simply start a project from that template. And all of that data is going to come in automatically. So I'm going to start just by showing you how you can save these individual elements. We'll start with the IDF data. Let's say you just wanted to save the 5-year and the 100-year. In this case, we could just delete these other ones, and we can actually export this file. In this case, I'm just going to call this my IDF data, and that's going to save it as an IDF data file that can now be reused on other projects. And we can do the same thing for our land uses. So in this case, let's add in gravel, let's say 0.7, and we could do something like forest, let's say 0.15. You can also export these land uses. So I could just say my land use, which will now create a land use file. And we can also do the same thing for our catalogs. So if I go up to project catalogs, let's imagine a situation where I've changed this from double catch basin to a ditch inlet catch basin. So in this case, all I'm going to do is I'm just going to rename this to ditch inlet catch basin. I'm going to click OK. Now I can click on this and I could click export. And I'm just going to, like we did with the other ones, I'm just going to call this my DICB. DICB. There we go. Save. And we now have that custom catalog. So I can now re-import this into other projects. So to show this, we're going to close this project. I'm not going to save my changes. I'm going to create a new project. It's now blank. And if I look at my IDF data, you can see it's pulling in the default list. So I can just delete this and I can import my new IDF data. There we go. And I can do the same thing for my land uses. In this case, just delete all, import my land use. And we've got the gravel and the forest. And then finally, if we look at the catalogs, we see we've got the double catch basin here. Maybe I'm going to keep that, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to import my ditch inlet catch basin, and that now shows up in here. So I can now use this on a new project. But better yet, and so what we'll do just to demonstrate this, let's just add in some line work here. I'm going to save this project. I'll just call this new, let's call it my project. My project. I now have in this project the new data that we did. But I don't want to have to redo that process every time I start a new project in a given municipality. So what I can do is I can save all of this information as a project template. So what I do is I go File and then Save Project as Template. And when I come in here, I'm just going to call this my template like this. And it's going to save all of the project level data. So things like the IDF data, the catalogs, land uses, all of that is going to be bundled together, but it's not going to include any of the project specific information like the design or the images. And to show you this working, if I click on close, I can now, instead of clicking new, which is going to create a brand new project from sort of the default, I can click on new project from template. And when I click on this, I just go find my template file and open it. And it's still blank. You see there's no line work that came in. But if I look at my IDF data, it's got just the 2 points that we've defined. Same thing for our land use. We have the gravel and forest. And as well as a catalog, we now have that ditch inlet catch basin. So what I typically recommend is whenever you set up a project for a municipality, save a template of it on your server, and then that way the next time you have a project in that same location, you can immediately get started. All of the IDF data, land uses, design criteria in the catalogs is all already loaded and ready to go.